I would like to start from not Russia, but BRICS in general. One is, I think it's a bit unfair as to the standards that are applied to BRICS. You know, the standards that are applied to BRICS are relevant to organizations which are formed on a completely different basis. I mean, I would understand if you expected this kind of unanimity from ASEAN or EU or even NATO. But the BRICS does not fall into any of these kind of categories as an organization. It is not a military alliance. It's not even an economic union in that sense. It's genuinely a voluntary coming together of countries who have a variety of interests where they actually differ. So I would say that they have come together because if you look at what is the glue that holds them together, is what Secretary Mehta pointed out, that, you know, a dissatisfaction with what the Bretton Woods institutions today reflect in terms of the modern world. And you're really looking at reorganizing the modern world. And I emphasize this not in any kind of revolutionary manner, but in an evolutionary manner to reflect the growing interests of all the members of what now you see as BRICS, be it China, Russia, India, Brazil, South Africa. So if you take it from that perspective, then go back to the history of it, and I am really tired of Jim O'Neill, so I'm not going to go that far back. But it is in 2008, end 2008, that Russia starts pushing this whole idea of getting the members of BRIC, at that time South Africa was not part of it, together, and the foreign ministers meet on the sidelines sometime. And then you have in 2009 in Yekaterinburg the first summit. Even at that stage, I think there was this perception that here is a new anti-Western alliance being formed and coming together. And it's at that stage itself that all the BRIC nations made it very clear that this was not coming together of an alliance. This is not a new bloc emerging, but on the contrary, this is evolution of what at that time was called a virtual organization that wanted to reflect at the global level some of the interests that they shared. I think personally that that continues even today. I think that the desire to reshape the world, to have a greater say in not just discussing an agenda which is made up by somebody else, but in actually formulating the agenda is what is the driving force behind the BRICS members today. Coming now to the specific issue of Russia and Russian expectations of this. Undoubtedly, the Russian expectations of the BRICS summit, which coincides also with the SCO summit, is to demonstrate internally, domestically, as well as to the international public that Russia is not the isolated country that it's being portrayed as, particularly if you today read the Western press, let's put it like that. Secretary Mehta pointed out that, you know, as far as BRICS countries are concerned, we do not recognize that Russia is a sanctioned country. But yes, we have to accommodate to the effect that where these sanctions have a negative effect on us, for example, on some of the financial institutions. So you may not be like, let's say, it affects particularly Chinese banks nowadays, where they're not able to maybe forward or advance to Russia the kind of monies they would like to, because they're worried about the effect of their relationship with the United States, the financial institutions in the United States and West. However, by and large, I think if you have noticed in the past year or so, Russia's relations with non-Western nations have grown. Trade has actually improved, while Russia's trade, for example, bilateral trade with the EU has come down by 17 or 18%. It has actually grown with all other countries, including, surprisingly, with India. We have even some improvement. We've started exporting buffalo meat to Russia. which is, I think, quite surprising as far as I'm concerned. But nevertheless, coming back to this point, that Russia essentially has a one-point program from the twin summits in Ufa. That is, it wants to demonstrate to the world and to its domestic audience that it is not an isolated country, A. B, it definitely looks forward to utilizing the opportunity to try and drive home the point that not everyone in the world agrees with the agenda that is being set out by the G7, the Western nations, whatever you may want to call it, the Euro-Atlantic bloc, in terms of global governance, not only on economic issues, but also political issues. And here I would like to point out to WPS, just add the point that he was mentioning, that indeed over the past couple of years, BRICS has assumed a greater amount of, has taken on a greater amount of political substance. And if you look at the Fortaleza Summit declaration, it mentions practically every single major international issue that exists, whether it is Syria, whether it is Iran. It takes a position on all these. And the position is not necessarily the same as the one that the Euro-Atlantic bloc has. But at the same time, it is a position that is calling for international recognition of the changed world, but also calling for an understanding which can be evolved through diplomatic means of trying to arrive at solutions to some of the thorny issues that exist. There is an undercurrent, I assume, now this is a realm of speculation. There is an undercurrent within Russia which would try to imbue the BRICS with greater physical substance, in the sense that they would like to institutionalize it. They would like it to have a permanent secretariat. They would like that whole paraphernalia of a bureaucracy to arise out of it, like it is in ASEAN, in EU, or in SCO. So far, this has been something that has been resisted by the other countries. And I suspect that this effort, while Russia has been continuously making this effort, it is not likely to succeed even at this particular summit. I think the current format of interactions, which is done via the Sherpas, is likely to continue for the foreseeable future. But however, given that you have the development bank coming in, there is already one physical structure. So could this possibly lead to some kind of institutionalization of the BRICS? It is a possibility, but not in the immediate future, maybe 2-3 years from now. And the final question is, of course, briefly touched upon by Secretary Mehta, is this whole question of expansion of BRICS. I personally don't think that that is on the agenda at this point of time, for the simple reason that the BRICS is not looking to become the non-aligned movement. It is not looking at that kind of expansion. And it is looking at like-minded countries to drive an agenda. And I go back to the original point I made, that the agenda is actually very simple. Let's rewrite the rules and let's get us at the high table, where then we can sit with everyone else and discuss and decide the issues on the agenda. I'll leave it here and maybe we can discuss later. Absolutely.